No Rest for the Wicked is an awesome action RPG with fun Souls-like combat. I've been having an absolute blast with this game. I'm now level 25, have beaten all the available content and collected all of these cool weapons and armor. And today I'm going to be giving you some tips to help you improve your experience in No Rest for the Wicked, essentially things that I wish I knew before and some mistakes that I made along the way that ended up setting me back a few hours of progress. So with that being said, hello everyone, my name is Dark Hero and let's get started. Now, given how many items you'll be picking up on your journey throughout No Rest for the Wicked, whether it is cool looking armor or some really powerful weapons, one of the things you'll want the most is to be able to have more storage for all of these items, and especially the resources because these are going to stack up very quickly. And you don't want to sell these very early on because some of these upgrade materials are going to be very important. Thankfully, you'll be able to enter the city of Sacrament very early on in your playthrough, where you're able to interact with all sorts of NPCs, but more importantly, you'll gain access to your own house and some free storage. So you will start the game on the beach around this area and you will make your way onto the town like this. And I recommend you to do this as early as possible for you to be able to store all of those equipments. In Sacrament, there's going to be a place that is called the Rookery lodgings, and there's actually two ways to be able to enter it. You are able to go up all of these stairs and then turn on this bridge. That will take you to the upper floors of the Rookery lodgings. Alternatively, there's going to be this door later on in the game that you are able to unlock that is going to act as a little bit of a shortcut. Down here there's going to be a few items for you to pick up, but more importantly and why you want to unlock town as fast as possible is for you to have access to this small little room where you have these 4 beds that are actually not functional sadly, a fireplace that you can use to cook all sorts of different foods, and best of all, a community chest that you can use to store all sorts of equipment. This community chest is absolutely amazing, allowing for you to store up to 40 items in it. And as you will see in a moment, it's actually pretty expensive for you to get decent storage in this game, so being able to gain access to all of this very early on is going to be very beneficial. Now there is one thing to note about this community chest. I do believe that you're going to be able to share items with other players once the multiplayer update is released by storing them here in the chest, and you might also be able to transfer items to other characters that are on the same realm by doing the same. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I'm very confident about it. Now speaking of storage, I'm sure that you can notice that I have more inventory slots for all of these categories, and I even have a couple of ring slots as opposed to only having one. And the way that you unlock these is actually very simple. So at the very top of the Rookery lodgings, there are going to be these 2 NPCs, Rowan and the Watcher. They will ask you to give them the Plague Ichor, an item that you can obtain by defeating named bosses in the game, and as you can see we can simply go up to them and offer the Ichor, and they're going to give us these options. You can expand your inventory slot for your gear slots, your item slots, your resource slots, and your miscellaneous as well. On top of that, you're also able to add an additional slot to your main hand weapon, an additional one for your offhand weapon, an additional ring slot, and an additional tool slot. Now in my opinion, the biggest priority is going to be to max out the resource inventory slot as fast as possible, because as I said before, you're going to be stacking up on these items very quickly, and some of these upgrade materials are going to be very important, and you are also going to be using a lot of these items to cook different foods that are going to be essential for you to heal yourself. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. And we get to drink a potion. And just like that, if I open up the menu now, go to the resource tab, as you can see right here, I have it almost completely unlocked. And because I have even more Plague Ichor, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. Inventory management is a huge deal in No Rest for the Wicked, so make sure that you go back to these 2 NPCs and be sure to expand your inventory. Now also on the topic of storage, one really good way for you to be able to improve your storage is by going over here to this NPC called Whitaker, and you're going to be able to purchase a small chest from him for the low price of 60 copper coins that is going to allow you to store up to 10 items. You're also able to purchase a small cupboard for a cheaper price, although it only allows you to store up to 10 consumable items and not just any item. And you'll be able to upgrade and level up this facility for you to be able to purchase even bigger chests that are going to allow you to store even more items. That being said, having these small chests on their own are not really going to do anything because as you can see right here, when I select them, I'm not able to place them anywhere. You actually need to place them inside your own house. Now, as you can see right here, you can actually have your own house that you get to fully customize and build. You can add anything onto it. and mine is currently very empty. It's all pretty much filled up with chests that I use for additional storage, and given how many items you'll be picking up throughout your journey, with a lot of these items being items that you want to save to use at a later point in the game, it really is important that you have all of this storage available as soon as possible. And then of course you can further add more utility to your house, and you can even customize it to make it more appealing, though personally I went with the basic Minecraft approach of just filling it up with a bunch of chests. So how exactly do you go about buying a house in this game? Well, it's actually quite simple. As you can see when I open up my map, there are 3 different houses that I am able to purchase, with these 2 being for sale and this one being called Home, which is the one that I have already purchased. Each of these houses are actually quite expensive, with the one that I have bought here costing 25 silver coins, this one that seems to be much bigger and is even called the Manor costing 30 silver coins, and this one right here on the lower part of town costing 20 silver coins. That being said, these houses are not available for sale as soon as you enter the town. There's actually a quest that you need to do, which is called Of Rats and Raiders. It's actually a pretty lengthy quest, so let me give you a quick rundown. So first off, I do believe that you need to come into this area and you need to go into this bridge and defeat a boss. It's a rather easy boss fight, and the way to get here from town is actually very quick. And once you are done with that, you're going to return to town, and you will naturally be led to this location. And inside this cage there's going to be an NPC that is going to give you a quest, that being the quest of Rats and Raiders, and he's going to ask you to free him from his jail cell. So all you need to do is come down here into this area, go up to the fountain, and around this location there's going to be a soldier that is knocked down. Simply interact with him and you'll be able to get the keys to open up that cage. Then make the way back to the same NPC and free him from the cage, and he will tell you to come here into this location called the Black Trench. You have had to cross this bridge to be able to enter town, and just under it you'll be able to find the entrance to the sewers. The sewers are a pretty lengthy dungeon, and at the end you'll have a boss fight, and once that is done a cutscene will play out, and then you will finally be able to buy one of these houses, provided that you have enough silver to be able to afford them. Keep in mind that you are able to sell your property once you buy it, although I'm not quite sure if you're going to get a 100% return on your investment, and personally I would recommend you to go with the house that costs 25 silver coins as opposed to the cheapest one, which is 20 silver coins, with the sole reason being the location of this place. It's very close to Danos, which is one of the most important NPCs for you to interact with in the game, and from here all you need to do is come down, perform a single jump, and you'll be right where all of these NPC vendors are. So it is the most convenient location in my opinion. Now, one of the most important NPCs that you'll keep coming back to is this one right here that is next to the house that I recommend you buy. His name is Danos, and he is the one that allows you to upgrade each of the different facilities, as well as add a couple of new settlements to your town, with for example the lodging staircase being the reason why I have access to the lower floors of the Rookery, which acts as a shortcut for me to go from the Rookery all the way into the vendors without having to go all the way around like this. And because at the start you won't have access to a lot of storage, I recommend that you get this first. I would also recommend you to prioritize the Caroline's Inn, and when you do so you'll be able to go into Caroline's Inn, and inside you're able to come up here and lie in one of these beds. And if you close out of the game for over 4 hours, you will return to your character having received a rested bonus XP. If you play MMOs, you likely know the term rested XP, and this is essentially a way for you to progress your character for just a little bit even if you are outside of the game. So this becomes a way for you to be able to progress your character without actually having to play it. Now this is going to be a very simple and practical combat tip. Every weapon in the game has their own charged attack that you can do by simply holding the attack button, like so. And with some weapons you can even do a full combo of charged attacks, which is pretty cool. That being said, while you are charging your attack, you may leave yourself vulnerable during these situations, and you may end up getting hit in the process. Try as I might, I'm not able to cancel all of these attacks by dodging, but you are actually able to cancel all of these charged attacks by simply pressing the left bumper. So that is the button for your offhand weapon, or the block if you are using a two-handed weapon. Another mistake that I really wish I didn't do before was selling these fallen embers. As you play throughout your journey, you will be getting a lot of these, and because I had so many at one point, I ended up selling 3 stacks of Fallen Ember. You absolutely should not do this, as the Fallen Ember is essentially a special currency that you use to enter the Crucible, an endgame activity where you progress through a series of different rooms, each with a different set of enemies, and at the very end you'll be challenging a powerful boss that is going to award you with some really powerful loot. And because you need to spend Fallen Ember each time you try to enter the Crucible, and given that the game is still in early access, we're likely going to see even more levels added to the Crucible, it is essential that you save up on those Fallen Embers, as this really is the best way for you to get new and powerful loot. Another mistake I was doing early on in my playthrough was coming here to Gordon, the town's chef, and buying these meals from him, when instead what you should be doing is buying the ingredients outright, and then you can simply walk over to this fireplace right here, and you'll be able to craft all of these meals, which are going to restore a lot of your HP, and buying the ingredients and making the meal yourself is going to be a lot cheaper than buying the meal outright. If you want to check which recipes your character knows, simply go to Known Scrolls, and down here in the food section you'll be able to see what exactly you can make. Another thing about No Rest for the Wicked that you definitely don't want to forget about is to come over here to Randal, this NPC that is going to offer you challenges and bounties. There's going to be a bunch of these daily and weekly challenges. I believe there's a total of 5 daily challenges and 2 weekly ones, and you are able to pick all of these up at no cost and do them as you play the game. These are all fairly simple and easy to complete, with this one tasking you to complete 3 builder projects, and this one having you kill 5 enemies with just your fists. Pretty simple and easy stuff, and you do get some good rewards out of it, with all of these giving you a very good amount of silver. And then there are the bounties. If you come over here to bounty hunting, there's going to be 5 daily bounties with a couple of weekly ones. But as you can see, I have already completed all of them. These are again very simple. They're going to place a specific enemy on the map, and it's your job to go up to them, find them, and kill them. They're going to have a skull mark above their head, so they're actually pretty easy to spot. And once that is finally done, make sure that you can back to Captain Randal, so you can talk to him and turn on the quests and actually get the rewards for completing them. It's a very good way for you to be able to get some good stuff from him, and I've even seen people that were able to get legendary weapons from completing these bounties, so make sure that you always do them. Now, a very important tip that is going to save you a lot of time in the long run is to make sure that you always bring a lot of tools with you, and that goes especially for the axes and the pickaxes. All of these upgrades that I mentioned before are going to require tons of wood and tons of ore for you to use them, and if you're someone like me that initially ran past most of these resource nodes, I would recommend that you always take a bunch of these tools with you when you go on a journey, and even take a spare or two if you know you're going to take a long while. Another big thing you should do is to actually not sell your gear. At the beginning of the game you may need that extra copper, and so selling a few of the weapons that you don't feel like using might actually be a good idea. However, as you play through the game, you'll get to the point where you don't know exactly what to do with your money. As you can see, I have currently over 60 silver coins, and there's really not a lot for me to spend my money on. And so one thing that you can do with the gear that you want to sell is to come to the market where the vendors are and come talk to Eleanor. By selecting the rune tab, you are able to pick one of your weapons, and you are able to add any rune that you may have in your inventory to give an additional skill to your weapon, much like I have done here with my katana that has the ice throw skill. But let's say for example I want to sell this great hammer because I have no need for it. Another thing I can do here is actually by pressing the X button, I'm able to extract the eruption rune at the cost of my weapon, and now I can go over here to this more powerful two-handed great hammer, and I am able to place the eruption rune into one of its slots, like so. This is how I was able to add Ice Throw to my katana, as well as the heal aura to my longbow. So if you like a skill from a certain weapon but you prefer the moveset of a different one, you can very easily combine them with this NPC. Do note that you cannot do this with legendary weapons to obtain their unique skills, which is a bit of a shame in my opinion, and also that the runes you extract are single time use, so be careful about how you spend them. Now this next tip may seem very obvious, but it's something that I really want to emphasize. Parrying is absolutely overpowered in this game. As you know, you're able to parry an incoming attack by pressing the parry button as you are about to get hit. This is going to leave the enemy vulnerable, letting you deal a lot of damage. It's also going to deal a good amount of posture damage, and parrying even works against bosses. And a really cool thing about parrying is that very often you have enough time to be able to dodge into the enemy's back and perform a backstab for a ton of damage, if not outright one-shotting them. Now, I believe that using a shield does give you higher parry frames than to use just your weapon. I don't have the numbers for that just yet, but from what I have tested, it seems to be that way. So if you are using a one-handed weapon and don't have anything on your offhand weapon slot, I would recommend you to pick up a shield. Now, a very important thing for you to know about this game is that stats aren't really everything, so let me explain. There's a lot more that goes into what exactly is a good weapon and why you should use it, so let's go over all of that. First of all, there's the gear rarity, starting at white, going into blue, purple, and finally golden. However, white doesn't necessarily mean that it's worse. In fact, a lot of the gear that I often use is mostly composed of white and blue gear. While in terms of raw stats, a lot of the gear that you end up getting is essentially randomized within a certain threshold, so it might just happen that you have the exact same piece of gear in a higher rarity that actually has a lower defense value than one of a lower rarity. And the same thing can happen for weapons too. The big difference between these rarities comes down to two different things, those being the gem slots along with the modifiers that each piece of gear has, with the white gear having 4 empty slots but no modifiers, the blue gear having 1 gem slot but some decent modifiers, the purple gear also only having 1 gem slot but more powerful effects, with one of them being a downside, which in some cases are actually terrible, with you simply taking more damage, reducing the effectiveness of your healing, losing experience or gold when you die, etc, etc. And finally, there is the gold or yellow gear that you can only obtain after defeating a named boss, though it is not guaranteed. And these ones do tend to have higher stats than normal, but the key thing about them is that their modifiers are going to be very powerful, and more importantly, their runes are already filled up and their rune slots are static. And I do believe that most of these runes are actually unique to these weapons. So given all of this, coming up with the perfect setup for your character is going to depend a lot on what the modifiers of the gear are. For example, I put a lot of value in having high focus gain, so that is something that I prioritize over other things when selecting my gear. It's also important to come over here into the stat page and see exactly just how much more powerful you are making your character and how your stats are interacting with your weapon. Because for example, despite these daggers requiring a dexterity of only 10 and these ones requiring a dexterity of 22, when we look at the stat page, their damage output is essentially going to be very similar. As you can see, these daggers are going to total in 18 and these ones are going to total in 17. And of course, if you wish to, the game does allow you to turn on damage numbers to see the exact difference. That being said, at the start of the game, you're not going to have a lot of gems to be able to add them to your build, and so having these additional gem slots are going to be wasted. Well, one thing that you can do is also come here to Eleanor, and by selecting the enchant option, you're able to pick one of these white pieces of gear. Let's take these gloves for example, and by paying 1 silver coin, you are able to turn them into a different rarity. And as you can see, we ended up getting these blue rarity gloves with some pretty weak modifiers, honestly. You can also get lucky and turn that piece of gear into a purple rarity, but of course there is the drawback that you may end up with a very bad negative effect. Be careful when enchanting your gear, because if for example I were to enchant these pants, I would actually be losing one of the gems that I have used. At the same time, it's a good idea for you to save up a couple of white rarity pieces of gear, because once you get more gems, you'll be able to fully customize these pieces of gear to be exactly what you want. We've already had 2 patches for No Rest for the Wicked since the early access release, and there's a 3rd one on the way. The game's a ton of fun and I've already made so many powerful builds that I cannot wait to share with you guys in future videos. So subscribe to the channel if you are interested in more No Rest for the Wicked content. And with that being said, my name is Dark Hero and thank you so much for watching.